Hi. What's going on? All right. So, I have actually made a canvas for lower jungle, the L jungle, sunken jungle, whatever you want to call it. So, what I can do now is export this. At least the upper part here. And I guess now that I think about it, I'm actually not sure what I would even do with these. I guess they would be for cliff stacking of different types, right? I didn't figure out exactly how I wanted to handle that. But I feel like those should probably be in their own file, actually. So if I do this and I call it, oops, cliff stack. We'll say dirt cliff. And then we just crop out everything from there. We should be good to save this by itself. And then we can crop out all this stuff. Should be reasonable. There you go. So, got rid of all that data. And now we should be able to just index this. I want to say the last one we used was the right one, but we'll see. I think there's a new one that DF made. I might need to index with a different palette is what I'm thinking. So I'm asking him now. In the meantime, I can start placing some mineral fields for the overmine's position. Put like some trees over here to make that a little bit less jarring. Oh, and I need crevices for this tile set as well. Of course, this also means I've got to redo the masking for those. Whatever. It's not that big of a deal, I don't think. So that will give us this tile down here. Up next will be Temple, of course. I don't remember if Temple was well orchestrated or what. Oh, also, I did get a fix from Icor about the Basilisk stuff, which we found like 2 or 3 playtest nights ago for Hydra. So when we play Hydra later on for Fraud Night, we should be in a pretty good state to not have to worry about that. The energy bug is going to take some more time to fix, I'm told, which is when you cast a spell. You give the order to cast a spell, and then like the energy isn't working properly. Like it reads as if that spell's energy has already been cast. So you have to like change the order to a move command and then cast it. So obviously that's pretty destabilizing when you're trying to micro and you can't waste any clicks. So yeah, we're doing Temple. I also cleaned up a bunch of this stuff. I'm gonna do like basically some housekeeping and just move all this shit over here. And then we'll see. I think it was like Temple Cliff. Is this it? Or... Oh, I think that was like importing it all as one file or something. I've got, of course I have Temple Cliff Fin, and then I have Temple Cliff Fin 2. And, well, I just don't seem to fully understand what's going on here. Why is it so... Oh. Because I have unmerge in its own folder? What did I keep that for? That's weird. See, this is what I mean when I'm talking about, like, dealing with shit that just doesn't compute. So, like, this isn't just one masked layer like it should be, in theory. It's like a whole host of different things. But do I really want to remask the temple for this particular purpose? Probably not. So, what I'm undoubtedly going to do is take Temple Cliff into... I'll leave it in the old folder for now. Oh. Hold on. I gotta close this. I moved them into the MISC folder instead of the old folder. I guess this needs to be an underscore to be up top. But yeah, I'm gonna run in here and grab the sjungle file that I have. Then run back into here. Temple Cliff into sjungle. I feel like this isn't the one that I have though. This isn't the latest one. Don't I have another one that's... Is it just Temple Cliff? No, that's not it. Temple Cliff A? No. Where the fuck is it? I guess it must be Temple Fin 2. I don't know. It seems really weird. Yeah, I guess now that I think about it, that probably is it. So what initially happened, which is a hilarious boneheaded moment for me, is I actually did the masking for this twice for the same image. Because Temple and High Temple are right next to each other in the tile set, and it looped back over, so I thought there was actually some differences. There wasn't. So that was pretty epic. So here we've got... What was the format I was saving these in? I always forget. Temple with edge. Circle. Alright, should be good there. We can minimize that for now. So that'll give us this. And then Ruins is a little bit of a different story, but I think I have something going on. Of course, I have a whole bunch of shit that's just waiting to be deleted. That being said, I think mixed in here is probably... There's like just a ruins BMP. Yeah, it's over here. Alright, so... But is this... Yeah, this is another one where I doubled up like a dummy. So if we go in here... Where you see this stuff, this is the last bit of low ruins, and this is high ruins. And I, for whatever reason, I just didn't realize. Oh yeah, that's the same fucking thing. So we just crop that out, save it, and then we'll just handle DF's trusty. Oh wait. Photoshop Actions Suite. And it is sweet. And it'll give us very, very little in terms of masking to do. Super, super simple stuff. What I will do, though, is reorganize these so that they are using less tile set groups. Actually, I'm not sure what I should be doing here. I guess this is fine. There you go. Let me just run in and grab my dirt cliff thing again. Oops. I don't have a... I must have moved in my cliff doodads thing. Is this masked properly? It's kind of fucked. I think I did a more recent version of this somewhere. Oh, that's not out. But maybe I was doing it in a really asinine way, though. I have to view this as details. It's ridiculous. Jungle. Cliff jungle blend. No. So I think what I may have actually been doing this entire time is I may have taken like a rip of this, like, and then pasted it over the Cliff Doodads BMP, which is just so asinine. Okay, so now we'll grab S jungle here. Also, while we're at it, grab regular jungle. R jungle. And I think that's high dirt taken from Badlands, but I don't think it matters. I have not tested them, but we will be doing that later, so have no fear. How's the Overlord? What's up, Connor? Oh, wait. Oh, no, it's... Wait, what? Okay. Want to make sure I wasn't doing more work than required. Never that. Alright. This will be super quick. I mean, we're already a good chunk of the way there. Hey Veek, welcome. How's your Mapcrap going? Oh shit, I didn't even do this. Aha, forgot to smack these out too. Yeah, Ike, I'll be doing that on during Fraud Night. Unless you're asking because you don't know if they're actually fixed. And you're asking me to test it for you. Oh wait, I forgot to do that. Hello Gamator, hello Dawn. Hydromaps, which ones are we playing? I have made some pretty nice progress on the first two Terran maps. They are definitely ready for more testing. As well as the first Protoss mission is, I mean, it seems pretty much final, but if we get more people playing it on Fraud Night, I'll have more data to look at, right? I could probably fix up Vzergo 1 as well, which would be a smaller map. I could probably make some small changes to that. before we begin the festivities. V-Zergo 2 definitely needs more time. So, but obviously the roster of maps that we have at our disposal now is way bigger. Like I think we had like 1 or 2 that we could have played the last Fraud Night, and now obviously we have all these. So that has been going very well. Yesterday's test had AI on it. We didn't play yesterday on stream, so unless it was from like a screenshot that you saw that. There was one time where we did play V-Terran 01 and Arak was active because I forgot to close the slot. That was pretty funny. But he didn't build 2 hydrodens, to my knowledge. I think I only sent 2 screenshots anyway, or 3. I sent 4, but they were of 2 different maps, and only one of them was from V-Zerg or V-Terran 01, I should say. You may actually see like early game spike builds that are designed to get upgrades as fast as possible off of like 2 bases or something, that where it makes sense to get that many production structures, or tech structures I should say, because there's so many more upgrades in this compared to vanilla. But I doubt it will take off as a viable strategy anytime soon. Seems unlikely to me. Screenshot I sent on the channel. Let me see. Wait for Ripcord to load that. Feeling pretty good about the layout that I put down. I hope to be able to flesh that out a lot today. If there were 2, as you're saying, most likely it was an issue with player need. The command has been bugged for a while. Oh yeah, I see the 2 hydras. So yeah, yes, Ultralisks. That was Eric. Fucking around like a silly boy. That's funny that 2 Hydra Dens actually does exist as a strat. I guess they're a fairly inexpensive structure, so 100 minerals, 50 gas. I mean, that's cheaper than a Mutalisk. Better dead than red. Oh shit. I accidentally did more work. Fuck. Don't you hate when that happens? God damn it. That's how ridiculously easy this one has been to mask. I accidentally did more work without realizing it. And it still didn't take me that long at all. Pretty silly. Why are there so many porn sound effects in these songs? What's wrong with these people? Can't they just keep that to porn and leave me out of it? Hashtag not my porn. Hashtag not my man. The science is in, bros. Porn is bad for you. Porn is like eating cake. What are you, a pussy? You want to eat cake? Be a man. It's bad for you. Junk food. For your brain. It's like playing Starcraft 2. Nobody wants to do that. Just saying, your brain on porn, drugs, and StarCraft 2 are all the same. Fucked. You feel me? Yeah, hentai is probably the same. Especially once you get used to it. It's like if you look at like the evolutionary reason why people get aroused at all, like people get turned on, is because of the increased likelihood of you potentially being able to mate with that person. And obviously if you're tapping into that from a real far distance, then you're going to lead to some real unhealthy results. Especially if you're doing it on a very frequent basis, we'll say. Alright, so this is Ruin's Edge. Struggle. Alright, close that. Now, I do need to figure out something for the Ruins main or whatever. It looks like I already did one of these. I wonder if that'll be tolerated. Sure, why not? This will be a quick and dirty version. Ruins main, it's jungle. What the fuck? Whatever. It worked. See ya. Get me out of here. No, I mean like the whole thing. Like if you're tapping into your there's a reason why shit works on us. There's a reason why like food makes us hungry, why porn makes us horny, why anything happens, right? And that reason is based on evolution. There's a reason for that, but it can be... evolution isn't smart. It's a program, right? Like our lizard brain, if you will, is just a series of programs that if X, do Y, basically. Like, at its very core, obviously I'm like oversimplifying a lot, but a lot of it is like if X, do Y. And X is like satisfied by a wide variety of different things. It's like sugar makes you hungry because it doesn't satiate you, but it's very valuable to you because for a long time, sugar was super rare. You could only find it in fruit. And so when you had that rare commodity, it was like, oh yeah, that's great. And now it's in everything. And so it's less impactful. So that's why I call it junk food for your brain. It's sort of just like if you eat the occasional piece of cake or ice cream bar or whatever, and otherwise you've got a healthy diet, you probably don't have to worry that much. But if you're a habitual sugar eater, then you're going to have some problems. And that's where this whole thing comes in, right? So, very, very... I think there's a lot of similarities, a lot of overlap. Oh wait, we don't actually need that one. Oops. Bye. I forgot we already have that. I can't believe I forgot that. I just made that discovery like 2 days ago. Oh yeah, but I do need the doodads, don't I? Donut eye. Do I really need the doodads? I mean, I might as well because I'm importing it all, but... What? I have to come up with some better way to actually blend these, but I have a feeling it's going to be limited to the manually painting it all, which is not really... I mean, I'm sure it'll result in a better result, but it's much more difficult to actually implement. Oh wait, yeah, this is where I have to grab cliffdoodads.bmp. Manually place them. Yeah, this is one of the reasons why this system is so dumb. Like, I guess the idea was to save myself on some work because I wouldn't have to bother masking out some of this stuff, but that idea didn't pan out. It just made it so that I had to do even more work now. Alright, so... What's up, Bailithon? Streaks of grass or mud on the dirt ramps. Yeah, I'm sure, like, that's the thing, is, like, you'd have to make it so that it works for, like, specifically for every single one, I think. Which is fine. Just more work. Alright, so Temple Cliff, this jungle, and then ruins. And then I need to do inner ruins. Alright, epic. I guess I didn't really need the temple stack stuff. But whatever. All temporary. Some weird music, man. Thankfully for the temple and cliff doodads, I have something I can use to automate this process. I'm also completely freehanding this. No idea if it's accurate or what. Compared to the other ones, anyway. Yeah, who knows where they sampled half of this stuff from. It's one of the reasons why it's so bizarre. Oh, I know this song. And I immediately must leave. Alright, next. Sometimes they have songs that are just absolutely dreadful. I can't handle them. They're like cringe overload, where they have some crazy ass shit. Insane sound samples. Voice samples, like voiceovers that are like super pitch shifted, like I'm deep and thoughtful. Like stuff I wouldn't even feel comfortable writing and recording as a joke. It's that bad. Yeah, no guarantee that I'll play it, but you can request away, man. Oh, wait, this is wrong one. I was thinking of that.
What you're experiencing is a preformed delusion based on unreal tapes, I've been artificially implanted as an emergence image. Just tell us to get going and listen. We can't snap you out of your family. Not in the second and the spot. Talk now.
Alright. That's done. Bong. Bing. Bong. Time to repair all these. This is much better on my wrist. Would be much better if I didn't have to move my fucking cursor so much, but alas, here we are. Do I play random playlists? I have a whole playlist. It's in the description, actually. It's just all of a bunch of electronic music that I've gathered for the purpose of listening to stuff when I don't have any music that's like already put together or new or something. Like a lot of the times I'll listen to like exploratory music or shit that's like stuff I haven't heard before. I'll listen to that on here too. But when I don't have anything new from any of the channels that I sub to for music, I will just go back to this playlist, or I'll listen to something from my own personal collection that's a little bit more niche. I would just listen to death metal all day. I mean, not always, but a lot of the time would be spent with that if I didn't care about the taste of others, you know what I mean? But this is like neutral music that most people can deal with. Sometimes if like I'll listen to one of the channels that I sub to is like a metal channel, but they usually upload like clean vocal, doom metal, like slower paced stuff, which is good for like background noise. And sometimes they'll actually have some like death metal styled tracks on there, and I don't usually change it. I'm like, whatever, it's on. But I do recognize most people don't enjoy that. Right. They are indeed difficult, but they are also required. Just like I must construct more pylons, you must construct more rust. And I guess these aren't really playlists either, as far as the music goes. It's they're mixes. So it's a little bit different. What am I even doing? Just hide them all, dude. Oh wait. Fook. Yeah, that's true. All right, this is song by Song Request. Duke Nukem 3D, going after the Fat Commander. I didn't know Tony made an appearance, but of course he did. Oh wait. Instruments are a little whack. You know what I mean? In fact, it reminds me of the music I made for Inconsummate in terms of like the instrumental quality, but it's, I guess it's par for the course for old games. Oh, these ones are going to be different. Oh no. Well, I guess it's a little meandering, but... probably fits in better when you're in-game. Alright. Jungle. Cliff doodads. Low. Oh wait. Then I have temple. Low mid. Sure. Hopefully that works out. Oh wait, I don't need anything for that. Well, if everything worked out okay, we'll be sitting pretty. What the fuck? It's just one random out of play. Oh, never mind. It's everywhere. Okay. Hopefully there's no other random hidden tall ones or whatever. That's pretty insane. Hopefully I don't have that lying around in the other ones. Time will tell, I suppose. What about over here? Are we good? We hot? Alright, nice. Just go ahead and close that and that. Just looking for this. What am I doing? Putting the beta hydra stuff, or jungle hydra stuff away. I guess that would be in here. Check it out. Mwah! Oh wait, up here too. Looking good. Well, now that we have that, we can well, just be done with this area, I guess. Outside of like placing some trees and shit. Which I can certainly do. Alright, well, I thought that might work, or might happen, rather. So, here's what I'll do instead. Oh yeah, that's right, I do need crevices still. What's up, Ichabod? Welcome. Was tiles not unbuildable? Or? Let's take a look. No, they are. Weird. Yeah, it can. It just has to be playable by a decent number of players. That's all. I guess in theory it could be playable by just 2 people, but ideally you'd have more than that. Oh, I guess I should make sunken mud as well. Didn't think about that one. What's up, Ultralisks? You play it in Fraud Night later? I know it'll be real late for you. Starts in like 2 hours or so. AI has vision of stuff on higher ground in V-Zergo 1. I'll keep that for the thumbnail later. I couldn't change the thumbnail earlier. I think I should be able to now. I had to wait until I started streaming to change the thumbnail, which was just asinine.
Looking upon these frail creatures, one would not think that they could contain such power. One could rule the universe with it. You must find them for me and destroy them.
Interesting. I guess I'll have to investigate that. Could just be as basic as like them getting shared vision of the wrong player or something, but I'm not sure what that would be like. What the culprit would be in that context. Well, I don't think the exact location would matter unless they scanned you and you didn't realize or something, but yeah, we'll see what comes of it. Yeah, there is a chance that that could be happening, but I guess especially if it seems like... Wait, what the fuck? Why was I about to do that? Especially if it seems like the AI was only doing so in a specific area of the map. But I assume you already ruled that out when you're telling me that they have shared vision. Oh, I actually made a bunch of ramps here. I mean, I guess they could look a little nicer. That's why also another one of those things that it's so much easier to catch in multiplayer testing, because somebody will just say, hey, I can't see up this area, or hey, I have vision of this area. Epic. funny that I've done a version of Stormborn, right? I've done a version of Eye of the Storm, but I haven't really fucked around with this map before, the full circle map. Couldn't tell you why. Just never found it as compelling, I guess. What? Give me the whole thing, dummy. I'm definitely realizing now, though, that I may have fucked up not realizing that I don't actually have a blend of the top of the dirt cliff for jungle. Is it in the test of New Gettysburg, the Zerg AI sometimes stopped producing stuff? You're talking about Hydra 01? Like 1.0, rather? Most likely they ran into having too many requests or something. That would be my guess. If the AI has too many spending requests, it will often shut down and not complete any of the requests at all. It's a built-in limit to the AI, unfortunately. Obviously not an intentional one per se, but one that definitely fucked up. Fucks up a lot of AI, given the opportunity. The way around it is to create a new system entirely instead of using requests, so that the AI never exceeds the request limit. Basically using requests as infrequently as possible. which is what we've been doing a bit more recently. It's definitely an inconvenience, though. It's like finding out that the system that you're working with is just shit and isn't working to specification. And not really being able to do anything besides make a new one. It's a lot of overhead for something as fundamental and foundational as telling the AI to build stuff. We don't have the source code, so we have no idea what defines the limit, how many things define the limit. We would have to go code diving, try to find it. Which is a lot more challenging than just writing our own system. It's actually quicker and more safe to make our own stuff anyway. Because we'll understand the limitations of it, and we'll be able to modify it. In the future, since we'll have the source code for it. Oh, well, that's not gonna work. Can't have the same tile right next to itself. Oops. Yeah, the only time there was any chance of us getting it was when it was found in a yard sale. But it was returned to Blizzard. I think it also had all of the original art assets, which, if you know anything about like my work, I am constantly kit bashing shit, like modifying it, and it would be so much easier to do stuff like that if I had the original art assets. But alas, that was the real golden ticket, if you will. A lot of stuff changes if that gets released. But, you know, that guy got his money's worth out of that, right? I mean, Blizzard gave him a free copy of Overwatch as a thank you. Honestly, that you should just be able to sue people if they gift you Overwatch. That's like trying to infect you with a deadly disease or something. Yeah, it was like one of those things that was just lying around. Listen, I don't speak Japanese, dude. Do I really not have any? Surely I have one of them over here somewhere. What the fuck? What the fuck? Finally. One I needed. This is another thing I need to go find a better. Here we go. Manually reconstructing my terrain, dude. I don't think they really... Maybe they did use it to help them with the remaster, but I would not be surprised if they didn't even bother touching most of that stuff. We know they edited some of the code because they added sanity checks, which were actually fucking insanity checks. But other than that, I don't know what the fuck they did. As far as I know, they didn't do anything. Like, it would be one thing if they actually added new content. But they didn't even do that. So what was the point? I mean, they added microtransactions, but that's not content. That's just aids. You shouldn't get a pat on the back for adding aids. And the one thing that you can say is that they added the matchmaking stuff and all that, even though you have to pay for that, on top of presumably owning the game beforehand anyway. It's like when they made it free. The base game free, they were like, oh yeah, but if you want the matchmaking... the only reason people play Brood War, generally speaking, like the vast majority of the populace plays Brood War, is to play multiplayer. So putting that behind a paywall seems a little strange. But whatever. They do that. Like, at least that's some content. And they sort of fixed up some of the... the networking issues, right? Like, we look at what we have to do in order to play games, like BattleNet wise. We've got to do it on iCup, and third-party platform, and there's so many drawbacks associated with that. So, like, yeah, there's some things that they did actually do, but it's like the bare minimum of fixing up the busted-ass stuff that they never bothered to fix up back when the game was still being played, and at that point it was just too little, too late. It's especially the too little part, because again, they did basically nothing. They didn't add any new missions for single player. They didn't even bother trying to make their own set of competitive maps, or to hold some sort of contest for competitive maps, or to like literally do anything. There's so much basic stuff that they could have done. And they didn't do any of it, so. Just a waste of potential. Yeah, I mean, eventually we're just going to make our own game, right? It's just that that's going to take a while. Why? Just give me the one that I want. Thank you. Was that so difficult? Oh yeah, yeah, that's true. They did do that. Thanks for the reminder.
Come on out of there, whoever you are.
I'm sorry, lady. I need the house.
Yeah.
We sit in the sun, in maze, we sleep, and we dream. Each of us dying slowly, the prison of our minds. We sit in the sun, in maze,
This is another buy. As soon as I figure out where this tile is.
dream.
Here it is.
Each of us dying slowly.
See ya. Not only did they not add a ladder, they just removed the original game, so that was pretty epic. I mean, I guess that's also the same thing that they did with Brood War, in a sense. You have to go download a different copy of the game. But at least it's actually easy to do that, where it seems much more asinine to do that for Warcraft 3. You demand to know? How are you anyway, Alexander? Well, I wanted to base one of them off of the idea of like the Van Neumann probes. I think that's how you say it. It's like a set of self-replicating machines that are meant to explore and potentially colonize the galaxy or the universe or whatever. It's a fairly widespread idea in science fiction because the actual science behind them points to that it being a fairly simple thing to do, if like a no-brainer in a sense. So much so that some people believe that because it would be so easy to do something like that if you had the sufficient amount of technology, which is not so far away from what our current technology level is, they think it's an argument against the existence of extraterrestrial life because since it's so easy, the galaxy should be just fucking full of them. The universe should just be chock full of them, and we should have found some by now. So I think that that's an interesting idea. And the machines wouldn't necessarily be malevolent, but more mysterious. And it would be very difficult to figure out like what their aim was. Sort of like a situation where their programming appears to be unclear. So nobody really knows what their goals are, if that makes any sense. So that's one of those factions. They are definitely weaponized, like they're able to prepare for war. I had a proof of concept lined up for them somewhere, where it was like not like an in-game proof of concept, but I had the idea to make a total conversion for Starcraft 1 as like a way to test my ideas for that stuff. And basically test their legitimacy. But it wound up being a pretty tall order for the time that I was doing it, so I didn't go too far with that. One of their main themes would be extreme adaptability, to the point where they weren't going to have too many individual units compared to other races, but they would have the ability to what the fuck? They would have the ability to significantly augment existing units. It does open up a lot of balancing questions. Like, I don't know exactly how I would end up balancing something like that, but I think it would be interesting to pursue that idea. It's like if you had every Zerg unit could morph, but also morph back and have like 6 different options or something. You know what I mean? So like I would want to make sure that it's not too crazy in terms of the scale of what choices you can make, because then it kind of invalidates the... Like, if there's too many choices, the players are just going to tune them out. But I had an idea to have it be very expansive as far as customization goes.
I can see it in your eyes. You're burning up. I can see it in your eyes.
More porn.
You're burning up.
Yeah, they would end up evolving as well. But it's like the idea of them already being at a stage where they're so far ahead of the well, it's mysterious because in theory they're very much like the most advanced faction in technologically speaking in the setting that I have. Well, despite the fact that they would be the most advanced by a large margin, you would also, like, they would just be very strange, I think. All right. This is ridiculous. All right, we've done that. I've got to slap in a reverse ramp to this area. So that's one of the factions anyway. Like, one of the ideas that I had for them as an example is basically like they would have the opportunity to, like, when you first see them, it would appear as if there was like a faction or like another race controlling them basically. But eventually it would become obvious that like the machine consciousness was actually just allowing that misconception to exist. They were like playing along in a sense, but why, you don't know. And so like that was like one of the ideas that I had for their presence in a campaign, was something to that effect. Yeah, I mean, there's like, obviously there's going to be some robotic elements of the faction or whatever, but I think the main thing that would be strange about them is just the fact that like they seem obviously driven towards a goal, but you can't identify the goal or the reasons why they would be after that goal or whatever their goal is. Like they're doing stuff. It seems like they're enacting agency, but they're not, like, to what end and why? Like, what is their motivation? What is going on here? Like, that's the mystery behind them. And it's pretty much as much characterization as you're going to get. from when you're playing them against them in a campaign or something. Like, obviously, because it's an RTS and you have to have conflict going on there, they are certainly built for war. They're capable of warfare, I should say, but the main takeaway from them is not that they are, like, war is just like something else that they do to further whatever their very strange agenda actually is. And that's sort of the way that I was conceptualizing them. What other factions do I have for you? I don't actually remember where I put this stuff. I thought it would have been in here somewhere. Yeah, so I had notes for 4 different races, all of which would potentially have some... There would be some potential for splitting them up into actual in-game factions. The races are not necessarily in-game factions. But there's the machine consciousness that I was just talking about. There are humans. There's prospectors, which are... they're basically like... They're slightly shorter than humans in terms of stature, generally speaking. But, like, I don't want to call them dwarves or space dwarves, because they're not stocky in the same way. But they are basically, like, a race that evolved to, or was guided in their evolution to be very good at handling, sort of like akin to their name, right? Handling prospecting. Like mining in space and stuff. So they've got, like, they're shorter to the ground. Gravity has a slightly less effectiveness on them as a result. Not like crazy amount, but that's one of the reasons why. And then you get all sorts of other shit about them, like stuff that's like very specific to the fact that they were evolved in that direction. And like their whole reward system is completely artificial as well. Like, what's it called? Like biochemically, in terms of their brain chemistry. Like their reward system is all out of whack compared to what a human would want necessarily. So they're like in a way like a science experiment. And I'm not really decided on who authored the experiment in that sense. Probably won't be humans, but just because they're going to be found out like a discovery by the humans. But they're the only other like obviously humanoid type creature race. All of the other races are like wildly different in terms of how that works. What's up, DF? Any idea how I would handle story progression briefings with them, assuming they'd have playable campaigns or something? I actually probably would have very little in the way of voice acting. Maybe there would be voice acting in a sense, but it would be like I'm not going to say text to speech, but it would be like I would actually voice act the stuff, but it would be done in a similar cadence where it's just it's sort of like how Zerg and Protoss talk, despite them in theory speaking different languages, or in the case of Zerg, like they don't speak languages at all. They're communicating thoughts directly to each other and relaying visions, like images and stuff. So the dialogue is there as benefit for players to basically like translate the interactions that are happening, right? And so that's one of the main drawbacks of writing dialogue for those races. So for the machine consciousness, the dialogue that you would see there is probably going to be in the similar vein as like Cerebrits talking to the Overmind or something, right? It would be orders, except it would be even more stripped down in this case. I think it would just be like you serving as a relay node, and there would be orders coming in. And I think the first thing that you would have to do in a situation like this is one of the first things I would do is I would have a series of like early missions, or maybe just the first early mission, like the first mission, would actually be making contact with something else. It would be making contact with another race, perhaps humans, to make it so that you at least have something relatable to latch onto. And your orders would be to study these humans and infringe on any conflict that may jeopardize them. And again, you don't know why you're doing that. Just like you're not given reasoning, you're just given orders, and you're expected to follow the code, right? Like you're given programming. So that's how I would handle that, I think. And then you would have communication forced to happen between whatever the machine relay thing is and the humans, because the humans would be trying to communicate in that sense, right? So there would be like ways that you can write the very otherwise difficult explanation of like what is a machine consciousness and how does it work in this context. It's very difficult to write something like that in a context where you're in theory not going to be able to have any dialogue. Very difficult to control information in the same way. But if you have a human character or some other character that's relatable enough to, even if they're not human, learn with the player, with the audience, about these creatures, about these machines, then there's an element of that can be used to parlay into relatability and parlay into understanding and comprehension without feeling cheap and without feeling cringy like you were talking about, where it just feels so out of place that it doesn't belong and it sucks you right out of the experience. Because then it feels a little bit more immersive or realistic in a way where it's like, all right, what would stuff actually look like in this situation? What would a first contact between a machine consciousness species and humans look like? And stuff like that, so. Mechanicus. Yeah, I might have to take a look at that. I know like the Necrons in that are supposed to be robots, but they're also supposed to be like undead or something. So even though they're mechanical, I think they're imbued with consciousness, so it's a little bit different. Whereas the machine consciousness is actually like a proper hive mind, where like the biological hive mind of the Overmind and the Zerg and so on, I can sort of give them a pass with the way that they presented it, because in theory it may make sense to provide in terms of like natural selection and accelerated evolution and competition. Competition of ideas makes sense in that context in theory, so like it would make sense for Cerebrits to have different strategies and to develop their own personalities, because that's how you differentiate between Cerebrits that are good at what they're doing and controlling the swarm and relaying commands, and Cerebrits that are not so good, right? And just the sheer number of agents that are running around receiving orders from the Cerebrits mandates that Cerebrits themselves have their own chains of command. And just like the reason why the Overmind needed Cerebrits to begin with is because the swarm grew too large, and then the swarm grew even larger, and that's where queens and overlords came in, apparently, according to the manual. So in that sense, like it's a biological hive mind because it all answers to one top dog, and everybody shares everybody else's visions and experiences in some way, which I guess is sort of similar to the Kala in how that's described in some capacity. But obviously, what you're sharing between agents with perceived free will as opposed to the Zerg that are bound to a certain individual. So that I can sort of understand. I like it, even though it's probably not how it would play out, we can say, in a realistic environment. Like it's not how hive minds work in as far as we have observed thus far. There's no individuals or personalities, but there's also no capacity for personalities in ants and stuff. So we don't really know in that sense. What it would look like if they had the brain capacity to have personalities. Would they evolve them? We don't know, but I can give them a pass in so far as like it doesn't seem so far-fetched that it completely destroyed the immersion of the experience for me. Machine consciousness wouldn't need personalities. They would have their own overriding programming that they were built with, and maybe they could evolve to remove that or to override that with some other programming. Just like the Overmind could change his mind about something and thus change the programming of the Zerg, but personality and agents, like internal free will agency or whatever, wouldn't figure into it, right? They're still responding to whatever their initial thing is. So So yeah, I mean, the thing is, like, you have this concept of the machine consciousness. It's only interesting as far as it relates to what we understand. Because if you only had the machine consciousness, you wouldn't be able to interface with it. You wouldn't be able to understand it. It might be an enigma, but it wouldn't be an interesting enigma with depth. And that's where we get to the point where we have to bridge the gap. We have to provide comprehension. And that's what I think is most important about finding a partnership that you can engage with in, if that makes any sense. So that's why I went the route that I did with my example anyway. So it just made the most sense that way. To pair up the agent that you would be playing as when it comes to the machine consciousness, pair them up with sort of like what the actual protagonist, or not really protagonist, but like the main character of the story would be. In that sense, would be like a human that would bounce off the idea. Like, even though it's told through the perspective of the agent doesn't have a consciousness, so it's not an interesting protagonist. It can't really be a protagonist. It's just following orders in that sense, right? The ultimate Nuremberg. So that's where you would need to pair it up with something that you could actually have character development with. And instead, you're not developing the machine character, but you are learning more about it and exploring it. And that's where like the interest can be maintained. So hopefully that gave you some ideas there, DF. Scrolled down too far, I think. Oh, this is the one I was looking for earlier. The other interesting thing about that, I think, is sourced from the fact that you have so much of an opportunity to you have a lot to explore with that environment, I think, and you don't really see exploration of what machine consciousness would actually look like. Like, Starcraft 2 did it such a brain-dead way that brushed past all of the interesting and intriguing elements of it in Legacy of the Void. Right? So, there was nothing to learn there from the Purifiers. It's just like the same old boring shit where they humanized them too much, and so it removed any believability. But if you can explore what that would be like from the eyes of a human or somebody else that could be relatable, exploring this totally alien thing, but it's even more alien than actual aliens, I think there's some value in that. Let's take a look. Yeah, I would have them actually speak English, so this isn't quite what I was thinking of. I also think that using terminology like +++ opportunity or whatever, like programming things or programming-esque things or arithmetic or whatever, I think you could work in some aspect to make it very obviously robotic in terms of the tone of the script, of the dialogue, but I don't think it would be required in order to... Like, you don't have to go that far with it, right? You can illustrate your point in a very terse way that no human would speak in, but still make it readable in a layman way, where you don't have to imagine that they're saying plus 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 opportunity, right? Like that translates to an increase in opportunity is available, and you can write that in ways that are much more terse and to the point without throwing out the fact that it's a machine doing it, the talking, in that sense. And so I think that would be better. It's like, I don't know, is there more after this, or? Or is that just it? I definitely wouldn't have them just speak. Yeah, I wouldn't have them speak like this. It seems like, why would there be any audio at all if they're gonna just not read English? That doesn't make any sense to me. But thanks for the link anyway. I mean, it's good. It's always interesting to see how other people have attempted to do that stuff. So. I think I'll end up doing it significantly differently than they did, for sure. Didn't I just do this earlier? Yeah, but the whole point, like I was saying earlier, the whole point of them, the machine consciousness having English at all involved, be it subtitles or, like, the whole point of them speaking instead of, like, to even take time to have a mission briefing, that's not necessary for an AI. They make these computations insanely fast, so there is no reason for them to speak that way, right? That's what I'm getting at, is like there's no reason for them to speak that way at all. And so, like, if you're not translating for the player a fair bit of content there, then there's no justification for having them talk at all, and they should just be completely silent, and you get your storytelling through some other method. That's what I'm getting at, is like it doesn't make any sense for them to have any sort of personality or voice if they're not actually utilizing that voice to communicate properly. So it just ends up being very half-baked. So while it makes sense that they would, in theory, be communicating in a way that the player couldn't understand, it in a real life, it doesn't make sense for a game to have that as a mechanic. If that does that help crystallize it? Like, what I'm getting at is, like, there's no actual reason to include that in your game if you're not, like, if it's not for the purpose of illustrating a point. Oh, yeah, I don't know what the exact specification of them is, but, like, so maybe it makes sense for them to speak in their own language at that point, but it still feels very underdeveloped in the example that I just saw, even if it does make sense because they used to be some other faction or something. I just mean, like, if you're trying to make a straightforward faction that is completely mechanical, then I think it makes more sense to just do it in a different way. That's all I'm saying. Oh, okay. So they were human and they became mechanical. Digitized. Interesting. Alright, well, I will return momentarily. Gotta use the bathroom. When I come back, I can get into a little bit more detail about some of the other factions. One of them is like an underwater faction. They've got some cool mind control shit. So I can talk a little bit about them. I think I've talked about them on the stream before. But I gotta use the bathroom really badly, so I'll be right. Hi. Okay, bye, Connor. Thought about using mechanical sentences and using some semblance of machine code in the language. Oh, I see what you're saying, DF. Well, I guess some sort of example would probably be nice to see, but I think I get what you mean. Hello, Mauli. Yeah, the Warhammer 40k lore is like impossible to follow, pretty much. So, not the best example, I don't think. You don't see Mixer on Restream. Oh, you're not seeing DF's messages? Well, DF's messages aren't on. You didn't see Connor say bye either? Did you see DFCU? I see it on my stream, so I think maybe you just, What do you mean, no? I look at it right here. I think you just forgot that it was so long ago. I was reading a really old message. You have a delay on YouTube. Yeah. I figured. You guys remember when I used to do ASMR videos? That was a funny bit. How are things over there anyway? In Italy. Where the fuck is my... Didn't I add that? Oh no, I must have added those tiles like halfway between something else. Yeah. ASMU. Wink. Who knows where I put those? Holy shit. Oh, found them. Just kidding. Mwah. I'm epic. A ramp to end all ramps. Oh wait, I can do this better. Hold on. Mirror dimension. A channel with weird shit on it. Oh yeah, I saw Connor's conspiracy theory stuff. It's so easy for people to get like pranked by shit like that, unfortunately. I mean, certainly there should be some personal responsibility associated with that, but That's definitely not gonna work. Well, that's good. So, even though it is a slow improvement, it's still an improvement, right? Yeah, it doesn't help that like on YouTube you can just like make giant arguments into the void, and then like nobody's there to say, this is a logical fallacy. You didn't cite your sources here. There's no facts here. And unfortunately, Connor also did like the ultimate faux pas, where he's like, yeah, that one video doesn't make any sense, but you should watch all of them. It's like not required to watch any of them. They're required to cite their sources, and you should also check their sources, not just like, oh, they cited their sources, so I won't check them. Like, especially with stuff that's as fucking important as this. The planets were deserted by the occupants because they lacked the resources to sustain them. Yeah. Right, so it would be like... They would just say like... The occupants of the planets abandoned the region due to a lack of resources or something like that. Like they would, I see what you're saying. Like they would really truncate everything possible and distill it in the simplest way possible. Void? I don't see any void puddle around here. I just see some swamp water. And it's epic. Epic. I don't think I'll have anything that requires 2 mini-maps. I feel like that's way too much multitasking required for the scale of RTS that I'm trying to go for. But certainly there's a strong possibility that we end up seeing some... an increase in the number of Z levels or something like that that's possible. And playing around with stuff like bridges, and, you know. Yeah, links are blocked unless you've left a comment on a video, and then I can approve you. It's a really stupid system. It doesn't let me just approve people from chat, which is probably one of the stupidest things possible. See if it shows up when I put in. No, yeah, it doesn't even show up when I check the chat manually. So I don't know if you've left a comment before. Oh yeah, you did a while ago. Hold on. All right, you should be able to post it now. All right, let's take a look.
Yes, sir. Right away, sir.
I see they didn't always have that, or they always had that bug of the fucking engine overlays not showing up. I don't know if this has the
Job finished. Order scouter? Job finished.
you can see the refinery over there. Fungus refinery. I wonder if he's just got a really old, like he's running it on a really slow speed. The turn delay on the SUV is insane, though. You couldn't build on jungle in this tile set, apparently.
Right away, sir.
Units just fly directly into the command center and then decollide. Pretty epic.
Input coordinates.
They were using Operation CWAL, that's for sure.
All right, bring it on. Destination. Strap yourself in, boys. Ready to roll out. Identify target. Delighted to serve.
Go ahead, Tara.
Tank looks red as fuck.
Ready to roll out. Identify target.
Goliath turret looks tiny.
Yeah, I'm going.
This doesn't have the music that I was thinking of before, unfortunately.
Oh, is that it?
But you can see the scout missiles attacking ground.
Transmit coordinates. Take it slow.
Well, there you go. Real trip down memory lane to an area of time I never knew existed. After being multi-layered, some sort of more natural undergrounds or aerial structure, then after bleeding on. Yeah. So stuff like that, I'm sure I'll have like caves and whatnot that provide cover from air units that allow ground units to safely traverse. Basically, like installations or something. You know what I mean? I think you'd still be able to move air units through a lot of those things, but they wouldn't be able to just fly into them from anywhere. Like over the high dirt or whatever. You'd have to enter through the entrances or something, you know what I mean? With air units as well as ground units. So I think stuff like that would be interesting. I'm definitely going to also have stuff that's like terrain that's burrow safe insofar as you can't tunnel through it. There's going to be a ton of different units that I have planned that will be able to move across different, like in different ways. Like sort of how there's the Aspect, which is a UED unit that's cut now, but it was a Vulture replacement, and it basically did like it had a thing where it could drain energy in order to cloak, like it had cloaking, but it could also drain energy in order to hover, and the hovering would allow it to fly over unwalkable terrain, including water and up cliffs and stuff. So stuff like that I think is interesting. It allows you to do some more interesting things. I want to have more units that play around with pathing and have different styles of movement depending on certain situations. I think the Infestor in Starcraft 2 would be much more reasonable as well, as an example, if it required energy in order to move while burrowed or something. You know what I mean? Like stuff like that I think is a reasonable way to keep the unit in check. That way it becomes more about a decision-making process to activate the ability. Yeah, check that out. It's almost red night. 45 minutes. Till we play some Starcraft. Basilisk Wars. Pretty much. Well, I'm still shaping up the rest of this map, but I definitely like the Overmines area. Obviously, it has the most decor put into it right now. That'll change over time. I was able to envelop all of the high dirt down here in jungle, which is good too. And I was able to get the resource areas placed for the other two Zerg players. I'm thinking, you know, we'll move on here. I don't know where the natural will be for either of these players. I am thinking a base will be hugging this temple, and then I'll have a little bit of high ground and stuff separating this area so it's not just straight shot, and that there's some maneuvering room, as well as making it so it's a little bit easier to defend this base if this player gets rushed down a little bit. This area will have a base. I'm not sure about this area having a base, or if it'll just be a really central walkway. That will also allow you to elevate your Z. There'll definitely be a base over here in this temple area, maybe two, like one up against the swamp water and one up against like the temple area or something. Maybe the swamp water from the south, and then like the temple area can be like a nice surrounding area or something where like the resources are on the low ground, all hugging the cliffs, and then you can like climb up the ramps and stuff to harass them or to maneuver around. Could be something like that. I'm probably going to have to move some stuff over. Like I was thinking just now, I should probably move the temple complex a little bit over to the left. But we'll see what happens. Like down into the left a little bit might not hurt. And I might even be able to space out these ramp areas a little bit, like spread them out a little bit, one to the left, one to the right further, so that I can fit more stuff in there. Oh, nice. Welcome. Yeah, we'll be firing it up fairly soon. Images where it shows SC looking completely different. The one that makes it look like Warcraft 2, yeah, that's from... that was what they showed off at E3 a while ago, or some sort of expo a long time ago, and they were... Basically, people were criticizing them for making Warcraft in space. Which is where that Artanis Piss line comes from, where he says, this is not Warcraft in space. Fun fact. Imagine. Space platform being a part of the map itself. Well, yeah, I mean, I don't think you would need 3D for that. So the idea that I proposed was basically having the map exist similar to a Photoshop document where you can have masked layers and you can have like just different layers of terrain, right? And I mean, I don't know how you would do it for optimization, but I know that you would basically have, like, say over here I've got a bunch of jungle, right? And then I want to add mud that seeps through the jungle. And so I would, in the layer below the layer that I'm currently working on, I would paint mud, and then I would mask out a bunch of stuff associated with the jungle layer, the layer that the jungle was on, and then the mud would seep through as a result. And then if I wanted to have some dirt below the mud as well, I could mask out the mud a little bit to add a little bit of dirt seeping through. Or then I could remove some of the mask to have a little bit of jungle seeping through the mud or something like that. So that would basically be how it would work. It's very similar to what I actually do in Photoshop, except it would be built into the editor itself. So that's how you would, like, organize organic stuff. But that's also how you would handle cliffs. So, like, cliffs would be their own layer as well as just the generic texture. The texture would affect cliffs and non-cliff tiles, but cliffs themselves would be a separate set of layers, I think. And so you would have, like, you know, something like this, where you've got this dirt cliff, and it's placed over, you know, the floor layer, and then you could go up further, and you can sink the existing one down. I think that would obviously we would have to explore it, and it may end up being very memory intensive to do something like that. But obviously when you save the map, it would compile it all, bake it into its final image, basically. One giant image. I think it would probably load the, like it would have the map would have the layer data still loaded, or like still saved in the map, but it wouldn't access it. So for the sake of like preserving memory, basically, it wouldn't access it unless it was necessary for the purpose of, say, adding a decal, or like if you, I don't know, like a ridiculous premise, but like you have a race that plants grass or spreads grass when it builds stuff or something, like fucking night elves or something like that. Like stuff like that, I could see like a reason to keep that stuff saved. But when you didn't need it, you would just have it all baked in that sense. And you would only have to selectively load it in for certain data or something. Or I guess you could like keep all the layers active or something, but I don't know. We want it to perform well. But I think you could get away with having like the cave systems for cliffs and stuff like that. That's where the layering would come in handy for that. So. But I don't know for sure. Who knows for sure? Oh yeah, I forgot to talk about my other setting. Oh well. I guess we have some time for it. So I had the idea of like a warrior society type race, and they would be fairly brutish, and they would have some sort of like efficient system where their social system was basically like everybody has some function during wartime, which is basically all the time with this faction. I don't know why you would have to do that. I don't have to do that. So I have the notes here. They're called the Kalar. Kal''AR. Massive families called clans specialize in specific functions of the Kalar war machine. For example, one clan governs cyber warfare, another one manages R&D, another one handles weapons manufacturing. Just some examples. They also preserve the heritage of clan founders from the tribal days of the Kalar and act as unifying traits of their society. Individuals are Kalar first, clan members second. So the idea is that they're all... The chain of importance for them is like their entire race first, and then after that it's like their clan, and then after that it's like maybe their troop, their battle brothers that they're assigned with. And the older a Kalar is, the longer their tendrils and teeth. The darker their eye color, skin pigmentation varies regardless of age. They can regenerate all muscle tissue over time, but they're unable to regenerate bone without medical assistance. And so yeah, like the main thing about them was the idea that they have like, there's visual storytelling you can tell, similar to scars on humans. You can like tell a weathered face. It'd be super easy to tell like if there was a Kalar that was that had fought a lot of battles, because what happens is they used to fight to the death, and their numbers diminished really, really far down as a result. And that's where like their unifying sense came in, where they realized we've got to stop ourselves from going extinct. So they still relish in combat, but when somebody defeats somebody else in combat, it would be like you take a trophy instead of killing them and taking their head or something. So you would cut off like one of their tendrils because they're going to regenerate it eventually. And like that's how they still appeased the urges, the primal bloodlust urges, or whatever you want to call that, without resulting in them dying, basically. So they also are in a situation where anybody who actually does commit murder to another Kalar is almost immediately outcast. Like, unless it's self-defense and you can prove it, but even then it's like a huge stigma associated with it. It's like the ultimate thing is like even if you're attacked by somebody else, like the point is to try to pacify them. It's like it's a huge social stigma of killing one of your own people, one of your own race. And so you will see some outcast CalRs in like piracy groups and other such areas because they were just thrown out of their own society, thrown out of their own war machine, if you will. And those are pretty much the only times you'll see CalR outside of actual CalR tribes. Right? They're very fiercely loyal, generally speaking. So it's also very, very socially stigmatized, like against killing yourself as well, obviously. So that doesn't help it either. Like if you end up getting outcast, like you're not even supposed to kill yourself because you're supposed to try and keep the CalR alive as a race. So it's been drilled into them pretty early on. But the fact that they regenerate tendrils is like if you see a CalR that seems to be older with like darker eye color, right? That's how you can see if they've aged. They get their eye colors are darker. Because if you see a guy with dark eye color but also very short tendrils, right? That's like, oh, this guy's fighting a lot and he's losing a lot as well. It's like he's getting fucked up, right? And then if you see a trophy collection of a bunch of tendrils from slain enemies, oh, that guy's like won a lot of fights. It's like basic shit like that, basically. So I had I was just interested in trying to figure out like how I would tell visual stories about like similar to how you'd see scars on people or whatever. You would just see it on portraits or in the in-game model for like heroes. I think there would probably I don't think there would be different models or sprites or whatever for the units. Like there wouldn't be a random variance of that. But the point is like you get some character info based on just looking at somebody in that race, right? You get some information as to how bloodthirsty they are based on how like a combination of trophies and facial features, and then you see how successful they are based on that as well. Like, are they winning and losing a lot? Are they just losing a lot because they have low trophies but also shorter tendrils? Are they winning a lot where they got trophies and long tendrils? Stuff like that. So, well, I think that's probably something that you would just see as time goes on. It's like the older ones would have darker eye color. So, and the ones where it's like very obvious, oh, this one's an elder in the society, and he's got darker eye color, and like every single one of them has darker eye color. The younger ones have much brighter eye color. Like that would just be something that you would observe. It wouldn't be something that I would like exposit in a line of dialogue or something. I guess I could, in theory, potentially have something like that where, like, there's a human and like encountering his first CalR, and then somebody's like, you see the color on that one? He's young. It's too bright to be an elder or something. Or like there could be some like reveal of knowledge like that where like one CalR is trying to front as if he's like a clan leader or something, but his eyes are a dead giveaway that he's too young to be that, or something like that. Like maybe there could be something like that where a learned human or some other race member who understands CalR society and physiology is like, yeah, maybe if your eyes weren't so bright, like some line like that, where it's not like exposited, like I know because of this, and it then explains this trait. It would just be like, oh yeah, I guess that's a feature of them. Like it would just be something that's like these characters know this based on their past dealings. Yeah, like the bottom line is you wouldn't want it to be like so obvious. Like the first example I gave of them being like, oh, you see that guy's eye color is too bright to be old or too dark to be young or whatever. Like that would be very much a beating you over the head with the idea. So, as you know, yeah. Bright-eyed youngling. Yeah, something like that could work. It's like they could refer to it, because that would be a real societal aspect of it, right? Like, this would be something that they would say. You know, it's really funny. I actually think that the voice profile of that, what are they, Hormagaunts or something? Homogaunts? The Half-Life enemies? The ones that, like, they are comical because they have basically no character or variance in their voice acting. It's like the same guy doing everything for for those guys. But they Vortigaunts, yeah, there you go. So yeah, like those guys, that kind of voice profile I think is not so far from what I would do. I would make it a little bit more raspy, I guess, a little bit, like a little bit more guttural than them. I guess maybe a better example is like the elites from Halo, but even then, they're like that's just too like generic American or something, or you know what I mean? Like it's that's like not like it's too human for what they are. So, but I would have something that's kind of like that as their general voice profile for the males. Yeah, Homogons. That's what I thought they were Hortigons or Horma. That's probably like a Warhammer 40k thing. Like I know. Wait, is it? There's something Gaunt. I'm pretty sure it's in Warhammer 40k. Horma. It's like their version of Zerglings is something like that. It has Gaunt at the end. I'm pretty sure. Yeah, aliens very rarely have accents. Like, that's the thing, though, is, like, aliens should have, like, biological aliens that have obvious sociology associated with them that's at least relatable or understandable to comparable in some way to human sociology. They should have similar things. Like, they should have dialects, and they should have all that stuff. That's where you get into, like, constructed languages. And, like, trying to further characterization based on that, but... But you'd have to actually decide, or you'd have to determine like what their accents would actually be. I think with the Kalar, you might even be like, since their families, their clans are like the only real degree of separation they have. Like the thing is, like all of the clans can serve in the army or whatever, right? But it's like the people who are the equivalent of like military officers that belong to those clans are usually like. They usually end up taking positions in some aspect that the clan specializes in, like weapons development or manufacturing or, you know, something like that. Whereas their military accepts people from every clan. The idea is like there's some element of unity there where it's based on a meritocracy. So you get this idea that if you're good enough, regardless of your clan, you can contribute. But if you are... Like, there's some expectation there that you're going to go into the quote-unquote family business as far as the war machine goes. Like, you're part of Clan A, and Clan A is all about weapons manufacturing. So, you know, once you get to the point where you've served out your mandatory, military service, you would get to the point where you can pick from a set of quote-unquote careers, like military careers, and most of them are going to be related to your thing, right? Like, your family's clan, or your clan's... specialization. That's the human faction is actually the one that's like the least fleshed out. There's not really one human faction, really, is the thing. Is like there's one human faction that is going to be a combination, like a band of misfits. Basically, it's going to have like similar to like the space pirate thing that people often see, like the hodgepodge rebel groups or whatever. It's going to be kind of like that, but it's like a coalition of sorts of a bunch of different people that's supposed to like... They basically, they're looking to expand their interest, but they're also looking to represent, in theory, all walks of life, all different alien races and stuff like that. And so you'll see like the prospectors, the humans, the Kalar, rejects, stuff like that. Like they will probably flock to those areas. At least some of those things will be very common. So that'll be like a mishmash. I don't know if there'll be a playable faction in the melee or anything like that, but that would be a faction that I would like to show off in the campaign. They would use a mixture of tech. The underwater faction that is based around mind control is like basically they have a slave race, or potentially more than one slave race. That might be like one of the campaigns is them acquiring their second slave race or something. But the laborers and the frontline grunt troopers are going to be part of the slave race, and then the real heavy tier units are going to be like expensive technology that only this master race is feels confident using. Like they don't feel confident leaving it in the hands of the lesser slave races. See you later, Gamator. And stuff like that. Like I'm really interested in exploring them because I think that'll be an interesting dynamic. I like the master slave race thing in general because they're actually a race of underwater people, and they like the aquatic creatures that biologically evolved mind control in order to evolve, like in order to stay alive. They evolved ways to like parasite the, not really parasitize, but it's like to enslave other creatures, right? And so eventually they found creatures that are like lower hominids but still have some aspect of consciousness, and they were able to control them even though they were like they were mammals, right? They weren't aquatic creatures. They were able to control them and have them build up things like, you know, invent fire and construct buildings and construct technology and stuff like that. So they accelerated the evolution of those people based on the fact that they were mind controlled, and eventually they ended up achieving space, right? So like that's like a faction where like the rich or like the high up important military commanders or whatever are like lounging in their own pools and stuff. Like that's just where they live, in pools or ponds or something like that. And like they're all of the spaceships and military equipment come equipped with like certain like anemones for the master squid race thing or whatever the fuck they are. I haven't really figured out what their physiology looks like, but the controlling aquatic race would be like that, and they would be built around the idea that they enslave lower hominids, enslave lesser races for the sake of furthering their own achievement. Milky Way planets. Yeah, I haven't decided that. I don't mind yes or no to that question. I think it's more interesting to explore completely different things, but I have no idea. That's one of those things that's like, I'll figure out the setting, the actual location, the locales later on. I would like it to be, I think it would be more interesting to have it be far removed. More similar to like a bunch of the Warhammer 40k stuff. I think it's more interesting when things are further removed from the domestic area, but who knows? Yeah, so it's kind of like that in a way, where the underwater faction in my case is like based around, or that race is in some ways inspired by mind flayers from Dungeons and Dragons, which were like Cthulhu style monsters, like Lovecraftian horror monsters that drove people insane. Except obviously in this case they're not driving them insane; they're enslaving them, right? But there is a lot of like willful, because of like the total mental domination that they have over these people, these lower races. There's a willingness to it, right? As opposed to it being like a servitude. So there, in that sense, it's like they're much more. You get much more out of them than if they were unwilling servants. I don't know what Clive Barker is, or who that is. I think it would be interesting to inject stuff like the Lovecraftian horrors into science fiction setting. Obviously, you're tempted to try to explain it And stuff like Lovecraft can't usually be explained very easily. So that's a potential pitfall, but I think it would be neat to see stuff like that in a sci-fi setting. I feel like there's not enough weird shit in science fiction. Usually sci-fi tries to stay very grounded, I guess. Or they're like just too... It's either they're trying to stay grounded or they're too lazy to come up with original ideas. Let's pick your poison. But. Alright. I'm going to wrap this one up and take a short break to get some food. About 15 minutes we'll be getting started on... Fraud Night. So I hope you guys will join us. Thanks for hanging out. Talk more shop about custom races and stuff, I'm sure, soon. Perhaps on my next stream. Yeah, robotic bodies filled with water. I mean, that's pretty much it. Like, that's exactly what I had in mind for my underwater squid faction, Mind Flayer faction. It's like they would have these land creatures, like, assemble this stuff. So... Post-Hydra EXE. I will do that. Bye.